Hi, this video lecture is going to cover perspective, validity, and bias. This is a small unit within this course, and I want you to understand these terms by the end of this presentation. So we are constantly barraged with information. Companies, businesses, news stations, networks, and advertisements are urging us to click on their website, their social media link, their headline, and their hashtag. Their product needs to get eyeballs on it in order to convey a message. So you are being bombarded with information, and a lot of times you don't really know what is true and what isn't true. A lot of times the message is tied to financial gain for the messenger. In fact, some studies suggest that we are exposed to up to 10,000 advertisements every single day. So, who are we to believe? How do we separate fact from fiction? Are people's beliefs the same as facts? Look to your social media account. Do you live in an information bubble where everything you see only serves to confirm your own bias? It's important to train your eye and your mind to see the truth within any message. And this case holds even more when you're looking at academic materials. So this unit of the course will cover personal perspectives from authors who are writing about the environment. Do any of these perspectives hold more truth than another? So things to consider. Before you start reading anything for this unit, I want you to consider a few main points. Number one, authorship. Who is the author? What credentials does the author have? Is the author an expert in the field? Is the author credible? Number two, thesis. What is the author's central claim or thesis? How does the author support that claim? With evidence, personal experience, anecdotes, statistics, expert opinions? Those are things to consider. Also, assumptions. Does the author make any assumptions about the topic? Does the author revisit or correct any of those assumptions later on in the text? Opposing points of view. Does the author raise any points of view that are alternative to the author's main idea? Does the author eventually refute those points of view? Is a refutation even necessary? And lastly, purpose. What is the author's purpose in writing the text? Is it to inform, to entertain, to argue position, to persuade? So things to consider when you're confronting any text at college or in the future outside of college. So first, let's consider perspective. When we talk about perspective, we talk about point of view. The point of view is a combination of the presenter and the viewer, listener, reader. So the perspective or the point of view is coming from the text, from the author, but also you have your own point of view. Where do those two points of view meet? Okay? Every author has a perspective. The question is, what is that perspective? And does that perspective cloud the reliability of the text? Okay? So if the text is not reliable, sometimes the author's point of view gets in the way of making a convincing argument. What are the author's underlying assumptions and values? How does the author frame their perspective throughout the text? From what point of view is the text presented? Is the point of view objective enough to be credible? Now, objective simply means it is unbiased. It's presented from a point of view that isn't tinged with an author's subjective opinion. Sometimes a subjective opinion is fine. In fact, many of the texts you'll be reading in this course have a very subjective point of view. Moving now to validity. Validity refers to the quality of being logical or factually sound. If we want to consider validity of a perspective, then we can measure it by how well it presents an argument or a point of view. If the text can persuade or convince us, even if it presents a point of view that is different than our own, then is it possible to think of that text as valid? Of course it is. Okay? Very often, when we think of validity, we want to consider its accuracy. Accuracy can often be measured by historical data, by experimentation, by other sources, and by our use of our own deduction or logic. Okay? So, accuracy sometimes is common sense, but oftentimes it can be measured through statistics, through facts, through data, or from a historical point of view. All right? Lastly, we want to look at bias. Bias refers to an author's prejudice towards the topic at hand. Very often, this prejudice makes a topic unfairly balanced. So, if a person has a prejudice when they're discussing a point of view, very often we think that person has a pretty strong bias towards that topic. Does the author make assumptions that are not based on fact or evidence? Sometimes an author will assume something without really verifying that assumption in some sort of statistical or verifiable evidence. Okay? Does the author bring in an opposing point of view? Very often, if there is no opposing point of view or there is nothing to support the author's claims on the other side, we think of that text as bias. And often we think of beliefs. Do the author's beliefs cloud their judgment or misrepresent the facts at hand? Okay, so all these things, perspective, validity, and bias, are ideas you need to consider when you're confronting texts in this course and on your social media, while you're watching TV, when you're looking at a billboard on the highway. Consider the source, consider the perspective, consider the validity if that perspective or point of view is biased in any way. Thanks.